Yeah, at the recycling center, of course, the bridge is right there on Old Berwick Road, comes under, and then in front of the recycling center on the Old Berwick Road parallel is where Kinney Run is designated to run, and it goes from there past, all the way down to the town park. So that portion is Kinney Run. We also have what's called a diversion ditch that runs directly, straight as you come over the bridge, it goes straight towards the airport and underneath the airport in a pipe situation and stuff. So that diversion run that's along our area sees more water than normal for the simple fact that, number one, a lot of silt has built up on the cement slab that's there to keep Kinney Run flowing where it's supposed to. There's an actual cement barrier there where the water hits, so with all the buildup there. More so, that is now going straight towards the diversion ditch. The diversion ditch itself is not defined good enough anymore. It's been really altered its courseway, and it's really jagged, weeds, debris still in it. There's a telephone pole that was deposited from the flood that's, where very bulky and awkward to get to. But we've had in our hazardous mitigation plan with the county plan where each community puts items in there, the cleanup of the diversion ditch, so we at least can have a good flow of water, which is designed to do when the Kinney Run raises. The diversion ditch is to take on excess water, give it a quicker run to the river. So with that being as built up as it is, that diversion ditch doesn't do as good a job as it is. So that's why we target that in our hazardous mitigation. We've gone after funding to do that as a cleanup, to get in front of the cement plus the diversion ditch as a complete straight run to try and relieve the fast when water gets up there and challenging, that it can get out to the river in a second form of egress straight to the river. So
and where are you right now with that mitigation plan?
It's in the county's hazardous mitigation. It was a year ago that the county's plan was updated. We've actually had it in twice. They're a 5-year plan, so it was put in 5 years ago. And then the 2011 flood, we looked for action as an item for funding, and it was denied to do anything. So really our question would be with the people in the room to look at it is it classified as a diversion ditch, something that can be done by the town with action, or do we need clearance to do it? It's not the waterway, it's not Kinney Run, it is just the diversion ditch. So we were denied and told, don't touch it, you can't touch it. That's kind of where we've stood, but we, given the opportunity to be able to have a contractor or ourselves in there, that could easily be a portion that could be potentially cleaned up, because we don't feel it is Kinney's Run, but it helps alleviate Kinney's Run, and we would like to see that.
Okay, and further down from there,
behind you, Con Air has put an access road
Yes.
over behind the recycling center. Do you consider that another choke point?
Well, the Connear diversion road is behind 7th Street where they made the road to go in there. So that's past us, past the next building where Kinney Run goes past Patterson Drive. So the Connear access point's down the road. Directly behind us is Brian's Commercial Stainless, and that's the diversion ditches. So we don't have any additional choke points directly at the recycling center, Industrial Drive, or Patterson Drive. It's down at the extension back at 7th Street where the Connear Road goes up and over.
and that's a rather large pipe, Art, when I looked at it down there. Of course, the question here is the buildup of any sediment in there.
Yeah.
And one last one, Brian, from Commercial Stainless. Brian, what was the level of water, what did you experience in the last event at your facility?
We were at floor level, which is 486. But that water, I was just telling these guys, at our location, the diversion ditch, once you get past the recycling building, that ditch is fine. And when Kinney's Run is coming up, it's getting down through at our place fine. But when the river comes up, then it starts backing back up Kinney's Run. I think the bigger problem is from recycling back up through Sherwood Village and beyond. That's where the biggest problem is. Our ditch from recycling to the river, I think we're adequate, but it's the rest I think is the problem.
Well, we understand that the hydraulics in the river prevents Fishing Creek from really emptying into the river down around the Rupert area, and I would suspect it probably has the same effect here with Kinney Run. Bridget from my staff, we walked this whole thing, and of course the drone shots and the photos and that. And our observation, going back to what I said originally, was that over a period of time there's been a gradual buildup. So what may, and I'm just gonna use arbitrary figures here, what may have been 4 feet deep now is probably 2 feet deep. And it allows an overcropping, and then within that, you know, not that there's legacy sediment in there, but the sediment that comes down allows for quick growth of saplings and other things that by now we're probably, you know, probably that round, bigger than the diameter on a broomstick or something. And that in itself, if anything, comes down during a water or flow event, obviously if it gets twisted or turned, it's going to cause a backup in it. So that having been said, first of all, I'm going to go to the township first. And what are your resources? What resources would you have available if a permit was granted for a limited scope of activity in there to clean it out, to remediate that for the homeowners?
Yeah, Paul Arnold, I'm Scott Township Chairman. We've been looking at this for the past couple of months. With me is Todd Peischer. He's the township engineer, specializes in stormwater management as well. And we've been at this, trying to come up with a global solution to this. And what we found was there was a study done in 2001 that addressed Kinney Run tributary tenon. And all this information as far as hydrology, all the studies, we have that. And I just learned about this 2 days ago. And what we're looking to do is getting potentially some funding, working with the town of Bloomsburg to figure out, is there a way of potentially changing the run into the Susquehanna earlier so that they go down through Bloomsburg. That's one possibility. Not sure if that's going to be feasible or not. Again, we're still looking at it. The second question really is going to be, what do you do with all this water? As everyone knows, water flows downhill. And back in the 80s and 90s, the thinking was to get the water away as soon as you can. So that's what we put in all kinds of stormwater basins, ditches, to try to get water away from properties. Turns out that was the wrong thing to do. The best thing to do is to keep it on property, to keep it into the soil, let it absorb into the ground. And so all new development now requires that new developers have to keep their water on their property when they build something, impervious services. So if you put a road, a parking lot, or a roof, you've got to make sure that you're putting the same amount of water on your land and holding it there than it would before you built. So that's to address future problems down the road. It doesn't address what's happened in the 80s and 90s. So water's still coming down through the hills, down to the lower areas and finding themselves to the river. I think there's some things that could potentially help. I'm not an expert to clean out the stream. And that would be up to, again, DEP and some other agencies. We find out that there's only so many things that the townships can do without getting permission from the other agencies, but I think we can work together, we can get that permission and try to at least clean out that stream. Is that going to solve it? No, probably not, but it could help. But it's a bigger problem. And like I said, there's a group of us working on that to try to figure out is there a better solution than try to mitigate some of the stream restoration that we're talking about here. This could help. I'm certainly all in favor of it, but I think it's a larger issue.
Well, I've had several conversations with Bill Siegel from CEDACOG, and I know that you had a recent meeting. I had a meeting with him about 3 hours ago. And I know that there's some long-range plans or ideas, we'll put it that way, they're not plans at this point. But what we're looking at here is the immediate mitigating factor of what we can do to bring some relief to the homeowners. So
if I could have Todd maybe just comment a little bit. Again, I'm not the expert, but our engineer is really familiar with the issue here, so maybe he'll just comment quickly at what he's
I'd like to ask one question. I've heard many times that this is a wetland, and I don't know what the legal ramifications of that classification is. Is it truly a wetland or not? Does anybody really know?
Well, you are correct that some of it is designated wetland. But what we're doing here today is to try and seek some permission, whether it's wetland or not, wherever the problematic areas are, to do whatever scope of work would be allowable to go in to provide a safety valve here for what you're experiencing now.
Okay, so only part of it's a wetland. The other is timber or forest or
I don't have the parameters to what is the wetland, but I do know in conversation with others that exactly what you said, that some is considered wetland.
If I
I
can,
don't know the acreage, I don't.
if you want me to speak out there, I can at least say that,
Sure.
I mean, not all wetlands are marked ahead of time. So in other words, wetlands can change locations, and it's based on hydrology tests, soil tests, and vegetation tests. So the state or any agency has not gone out ahead of time and marked areas like, let's say game lands. We know that the game land is here, we know this is a well. It's not that way. We would actually have to go out and look to see, and you do what's called a wetland delineation to determine what meets wetland criteria, what doesn't. And what does meet wetland criteria that would fall under various agencies' jurisdiction in order to regulate any activities that go on there in terms of encroachments and filling.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And the other thing is people hunt back there. You know, you talk about hunting land, and there are people back there hunting occasionally. Now, not recently, but there have been people that used to hunt back in there.
Yes, sir.
When they put the new giant store in down where it's located now, we were told there was going to be larger pipe. On the one side of our house is 12-inch pipe, on the other side is about 12 feet pipe. That little one always backs up because it's getting the runoff from down from 5th Street across the highway, and everybody knows there's a stream that goes up the highway too. That fills up and we get that along with the other, so the two are coming together. And we've mentioned several times, the town says it needs a bigger pipe, there's nothing you can do about it, our hands are tied.
Yeah, what's your address?
934 Extension, East 8th Street. I had six inches of water on my first floor.